Hi, everybody. Professor Elam here. I just wanted to do a really quick micro lecture over the business life cycle. So, a few of you had questions this week. So, I figured if a few of you did, probably more of you do. So, just to be clear on the product life cycle. So, the first stage of the product life cycle is the growth phase. And in the growth phase, is the startup phase. And in the startup phase, so this is a really exciting time for an entrepreneur. In this phase, ventures are growing, they're growing their customer base, they're learning more about their target market, they're learning from their customer how to better serve that customer, they're hiring people to make it happen. At this time, usually too, the resources are scarce. So you're dealing with a little scarce, probably some scarce resources. And, entrepreneurs might be bootstrapping just in order to keep the costs low. So what that means is this means the entrepreneur at this point might still be working from home. So they're doing what you're doing. They're creating this business plan and they're walking through it, in a realistic way. So we're just putting it down on paper. They're actually they're putting legs to it and they're walking with it. So that's the startup phase. You're trying to save money, you're venturing into it, you're getting to know the customers, you're probably getting to know your suppliers. So you're starting to bring in revenue. Then we move into the growth phase. So, in the growth phase, what happens at this point is the business has been around for a few years. So, its identity has been developed, its customer base is growing, sales are probably accelerating at this time. You know, um, you are in the throes of it. You're growing, you're feeling more confident, you're reaching out to your customer base. You probably have a stronger hold on what your resources are and how to effectively utilize them. You are just getting an overall more well rounded approach as to how you're going to run the business and be profitable at the same time, or at least stay out of the red. Then we move into the maturity phase. So, in the maturity phase, a lot of competition has entered into the market. So, when the product has maybe saturated the market, or you're now in the market with a bunch of low cost alternatives, the the entrepreneur is dealing with competition at this time. So, you're fighting for the customer's attention. So you are maybe changing different aspects of your product or service in order to meet the consumer's changing demand. Or you're looking at what the competition's doing, what they're doing well, and you're incorporating that as well. You don't have to have a unique idea. McDonald's did not invent the hamburger. So if you see the competition is doing something and they're doing it well and they're being successful, but should you by all means copy it and jump in? Absolutely. Absolutely. You probably are starting to, at this point in the maturity phase, you're probably starting to outsource certain things that aren't, feasibly um, as beneficial as they could have been maybe at the beginning when you were doing everything on your own. So now it's maybe more effective to start outsourcing things. But it's very common in the maturity phase for companies to look around at the competition and make changes accordingly to what the consumer wants or what the competition is doing that is bringing them in, a greater draw when it comes to their client base, when it comes to their revenue base. You are competing. You're making those necessary changes in order to stay relevant to your customers. And for a lot of companies, they can stay in this maturity phase for a really long time. This is something where they're always changing and adapting. I mean, look at Campbell's Soup. How long has Campbell's Soup been around? Since the beginning of time. I mean, not really, but you know what I'm saying. And they're always adapting. They started out with tomato and chicken noodle soup. And as the consumer's preferences changed, so did the offerings that this company was, that Campbell's was offering to, their customer base. And then what their customer base wanted maybe changed, or maybe their target market changed, or, maybe we in the external environment were screaming more about, we want less sodium in our, in our soups. So now we started making soups with less sodium. But again, in that maturity phase, you've really saturated the market. Now you're just trying to stay relevant. And then the last phase is the decline phase. So in the decline phase, you may decline, business may decline, or you might have a rebirth. But in any way, for a lot of companies in the decline phase, this is where their product or service might be fizzling out, like VHS recorders or the calculator, or look, even the phones that used to hang on the wall. Remember those phones? Probably don't even remember those. But there used to be phones where you would call people's homes and the phones would be hanging on the wall and you would actually answer the phone. So a lot of our products and services also decline over time. It's our customer base once again, has changed. So many customers that have lasted many years in businesses have gone through this cycle, this changing business cycle, a lot of times, different times. And a lot of times they will come back and they will forge forward with a different strategy that better facilitates what's going on right now, what the competition is doing, how your client base has changed. Have you taken on a new target market? What are consumer preferences? So instead of being completely irrelevant, you go into like a rebirth. So a lot of companies will just decline and opt out. Other companies will, restructure and bring about a new strategy that is, more relevant to what's going on right now. So anyways, I hope that answered some of your questions. As always, feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I am always happy to do any type of micro lecture if you need more clarification on something. Everybody take care.